Ever feel like, you're just going through the motions with studying?
Yeah.
You highlight, you reread, but the information just doesn't stick.
Yeah.
We've all been there, right? But what if I told you there's a way to really kind of like supercharge your learning, make that information really sink in?
It sounds like you're talking about moving beyond passive learning and embracing a more active approach.
Okay, so no more zoning out while highlighting textbooks.
hmm
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this active learning thing. What is it?
Well, it's all about engaging your brain, not just your eyes.
Right.
Imagine trying to learn how to play, let's say, a new song on the piano.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just sit and stare at the sheet music, would you? You'd get your hands on the keys, you'd practice the chords, maybe even hum along.
Right.
Active learning is about applying that same hands-on approach to, well, really any subject you're trying to learn.
So instead of passively absorbing information, you're actively interacting with it. Kind of like a musician practicing their instrument. I like that analogy.
Exactly. And just like a musician develops muscle memory through practice, active learning helps you strengthen those neural connections in your brain,
Ah.
making it much easier to recall information later on. There's actual science behind it, too. Studies have shown that students who actively engage with material, let's say through techniques like retrieval practice, they remember significantly more than those who just reread notes or textbooks.
Okay, retrieval practice. Now, the term I haven't heard before. Break that down for me. What does that even look like?
It's simply the act of trying to recall information from memory without looking at your notes.
Ah.
Think flashcards, self-testing, or even just writing down, everything you can remember about a topic, but from scratch.
Oh, okay.
It feels a bit like, giving yourself a pop quiz, but that effortful retrieval process is what really cements those memories in your brain. It's like when you try to remember someone's name, you struggle for a bit, and then suddenly, boom, it pops into your head.
Yeah.
That struggle is actually strengthening your memory.
Okay, so no pain, no gain. But flashcards and self-testing. That sounds like a lot of work. Are there any other active learning strategies that might feel a little less, well, test-like?
Absolutely. One of the most powerful and I think enjoyable techniques is teaching.
Okay.
Try explaining what you've learned to someone else, even if it's just, a pet or a houseplant or that rubber duck sitting on your desk.
So I'm channeling my inner professor, even if my audience doesn't quite understand what I'm talking about.
Precisely. The act of teaching, it forces you to organize your thoughts, clarify any fuzzy areas, and really grasp the material deeply enough to explain it in simple terms.
Interesting. So by teaching, I'm not just helping someone else learn, I'm solidifying my own understanding, kind of a win-win situation. Are there any other active learning strategies that we could kind of add to this win-win?
Definitely. Another great one is turning your study sessions into active learning opportunities. Instead of just passively reading a chapter, try creating a mind map of the key concepts or summarize the information in your own words. As if you were explaining it to a friend, you can even come up with real-world examples, to illustrate those concepts.
So it's about transforming studying from a chore into a more engaging, interactive experience. Instead of just trying to cram information into my brain, I'm actively processing it, making connections, and even finding ways to make it relevant to my own life. That sounds a lot more effective and, dare I say, fun.
You got it.
Yeah.
And remember, active learning isn't just about specific techniques. It's really a mindset, a way of approaching any learning opportunity with curiosity and a desire to truly understand.
I'm starting to see how this could really transform the way I learn, but I have to admit, I'm a bit skeptical about using it in, certain situations. For example, what about lectures? I mean, how can you be active when you're just sitting there listening to someone talk?
That's a great question. And it highlights a really common misconception about active learning. It's not about, being physically active.
Right, okay.
It's about actively engaging your mind. So even in a lecture setting, there are ways to kind of shift from that passive listening to active learning.
Okay, so I don't need to start doing jumping jacks in the back of the lecture hall, but how can I actively engage with the material when I'm not the one leading the discussion?
Well, think about it like this. Instead of viewing a lecture as a one-way information download, try to consider it more as a dialogue.
Okay.
Even if you're not the one speaking.
Okay.
Before the lecture, even, take some time to review the topic, jot down any questions that you have or areas that you'd like to, maybe learn more about. That way you're already priming your brain to kind of actively engage with the information.
So I'm setting an intention for the lecture. I'm not just showing up with a blank slate.
Yeah.
I like that. What else can I do, during the lecture to stay actively engaged?
Challenge yourself to connect the dots. As the lecturer is presenting information, ask yourself, how does this relate to what I already know? What are the implications of this idea? Jot down your thoughts and questions, in the margins of your notes. And don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask for clarification if something is unclear.
So I'm turning the lecture into a conversation in my own head. I'm asking questions, making connections, clarifying any points that feel fuzzy. But what about after the lecture? What can I do to, make sure that information truly sinks in?
That's where those active learning strategies we were talking about earlier really come into play. Instead of just filing your notes away, take some time to review them, pretty soon after the lecture. Summarize the, key takeaways, maybe in your own words, or create a mind map to kind of visualize the connections between those different concepts. You could even try teaching the material to someone else or quiz yourself to solidify your understanding.
It sounds like it's all about transforming those passive moments of listening and note-taking into opportunities for more active engagement and even reflection.
Precisely. And the beauty of active learning is that it's a skill you can apply to really any area of your life, not just academics.
Well, that's an interesting point. So how can I apply this concept of active learning to other areas of my life beyond, the classroom or lecture hall?
Well, think about, a hobby that you're passionate about or a new skill that you're trying to develop. Maybe it's learning a new language, mastering a musical instrument, or even becoming a better cook.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Instead of just passively following recipes, I could experiment with different ingredients, try to understand the underlying techniques, and maybe even create my own culinary masterpieces.
Exactly. You're embracing a mindset of curiosity, experimentation, and active engagement. And that's what active learning is all about. It's about taking ownership of your learning journey and approaching it with a sense of excitement and even exploration.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense. But I have to admit, I'm still, a bit wary about fully embracing this active learning thing. What if it's just a fad, another trendy study technique that, promises the world but doesn't deliver? What makes active learning different?
It's not just a fad, it's really a fundamental shift in how we approach learning.
Sure.
Passive learning, simply trying to absorb information, it might have worked in the past when information was scarce, carefully curated.
Right.
But in today's world, we're bombarded with information from all directions.
That's right.
We need to be more discerning, more selective, about what we choose to learn and how we engage with it.
So in this age of information overload, active learning is less about, memorizing facts and more about developing those critical thinking skills and learning strategies that can help us navigate this complex landscape.
You've hit the nail on the head. Active learning is about developing those mental muscles, that allow us to analyze information, make connections, apply knowledge in meaningful ways. It's about becoming lifelong learners, who can adapt to new challenges and thrive in an ever-changing world.
That makes a lot of sense. But, we've been talking a lot about the individual benefits of active learning.
Yep.
I'm curious, what impact do you think this shift from passive to active learning could have on society as a whole?
That's a fascinating question. It makes me think about how, a world full of active learners could approach problems differently, like you said. Do you think it could lead to more innovative solutions or a more engaged citizenry?
That's a really great point. I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right.
Absolutely. If we can cultivate a society where people are actively engaged in learning, curious about the world around them, and eager to understand different perspectives, I think we can tackle some of the biggest challenges we face.
It's like we're shifting from a culture of passive consumption to one of active creation and problem solving.
Right. Exactly. Imagine a world where people aren't just absorbing information, but they're actively questioning it, analyzing it, and using it to make informed decisions, to drive innovation, to build a better future. It's inspiring, really.
That's a really inspiring thought. It gives me hope for the future.
Yeah.
As we kind of wrap up our conversation about active learning, it's striking me that this isn't just about, acing exams or getting ahead in our careers. It's about something much bigger, right?
It is. It's about unlocking our potential as individuals and as a society. It's about embracing a mindset of continuous growth, curiosity, and a thirst for knowledge.
It's about becoming lifelong learners, not just students in a classroom, but active participants in the world around us.
Beautifully put. And the wonderful thing is this journey of active learning is open to everyone. It's not about innate talent or intelligence. It's about adopting the right mindset and, utilizing the tools and strategies that we've been talking about today.
So to recap, active learning is about engaging our brains, not just our eyes. It's about strengthening those neural connections, making information stick, and developing those critical thinking skills that are so essential in today's world.
And remember, it's not just about textbooks and classrooms. It's a way of approaching life,
Yeah.
with that sense of curiosity, a willingness to experiment, and a desire to continuously learn and grow.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our exploration of active learning. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked about how active learning can transform our individual learning journeys, but just imagine the ripple effect if we all embrace this mindset. What kind of world could we create if we all became active learners, engaged citizens, and lifelong seekers of knowledge? I think the possibilities are truly limitless.